have so much going around it. You've become the most interesting team in college football the last 2 weeks. What's this been like to cover here the last couple of weeks around Vegas?
Isn't it wild? I guess it's not completely shocking that they're winning. I mean, the Fresno game was crazy that they beat them up that badly. But, yeah, the other stuff with the conference chaos and then the starting quarterback in Matthew Sluka, it's been pretty nuts.
All right, so this Sluka situation, like, there's obviously a lot of people saying a lot of things. What's your read on everything that's gone down with this?
Well, I will say, the original story came out that Sluka claims that he didn't get money that he was promised. And that's kind of been the narrative because UNLV didn't answer that aside from saying, hey, he came to us, what he asked for would be a violation of pay-for-play in Nevada state law. But beyond that, none of the stories really got out. So it still kind of looks like a lot of people believe that Sluka got screwed out of money. I don't necessarily believe that. I think it's somewhere in between. But here's the thing. It's worked out to this point because the way they recruited for this team is they recruited depth at quarterback, and Sluka came in later than the latest kid, Malik Williams. So yesterday, this last weekend as a coming out party, they looked fine at quarterback. In fact, they looked a little bit better, and I actually think for that game, they actually galvanized the program because they were getting so much negative stuff from around the country, and people were saying that UNLV is done. They needed Sluka, now they're screwed, and right now it looks like they're going to be okay at quarterback.
Yeah, I'd say, most teams, right, if you don't pay attention to the team internally a lot, when you lose your starting quarterback, that would be the assumption, right? That, things are about to go haywire. Take me back to August, I guess, Steve. From what I've read, it sounds like this was a legit close quarterback competition. Was that the case back then, that these guys were legit battling for the job?
I thought it was. On air and any interviews I did or podcasts we do, I thought it was a 50-50 battle, and then Sluka pulled ahead at the end. I think they picked Sluka based on maybe ultimate upside, explosiveness, but I thought Malik Williams had a similar skill set, probably a better thrower, but a little more steady. And Sluka got the job, but he wasn't way ahead of Malik Williams. So as it turned out, here's the thing with both guys, and they did this intentionally. They wanted a running element to add to their offense. Mm-hmm. The go-go offense is a good running back offense, but it didn't have the edge threats at quarterback. So they brought in two guys they thought could take the edge and give different looks to the defense. And now as it turns out, Malik Williams has some skills in his toolbox that Sluka doesn't. And also the other thing was both guys are old guys.
Yeah.
So, one's 23, one's 24. Malik Williams looks like he's 38, and I'm not busting on him, but he did an internship early this year, so he kind of got integrated into the community, and he looked like the starting quarterback, was calm, cool, collected the entire game.
Yeah, you look at his numbers. He's from Campbell, and people are like, well, what do you know about Campbell football? I don't know anything about Campbell football, but I know that this guy's their all-time leading passer, right? Like that's not nothing, right? When you look at somebody's history, that they can at least go out and play ball a little bit.
Yep, both guys can, and I don't think Sluka presented his ask of big money the right way. 3 games into the season is not the right way. I think he actually could have probably gotten something, but it was just the way it was presented. And Barry Odom has been pretty consistent. That's another thing. When you're around the program, you see this stuff. He's been pretty consistent on, listen, guys are going to get NIL, but if it's the first thing you mention, we're probably not the program for you. They're not a giant budget program, but they can get money from the boosters. They have a healthy budget. NIL-wise, they're 2-star players. I'm certain they're getting good NIL dollars, but that's after you build equity and you build trust. And in the case of Sluka, it was just, to me, the way he asked and the timing of the ask did kind of seem like extortion. Like, hey, what are you going to do without me? And I think Barry Odom's like, hey, we got a guy behind you. We're good.
Yeah, and my goodness, they went out and just absolutely blew the doors off Fresno State last Saturday for sure. As we got Steve Caulfield from ESPN Radio in Las Vegas with us here. And, I don't know if you've seen any traction. Like there were some stories, right, of various people in the area being like, "Oh, we can get the 100,000," but by that point they were past it. Like, has there been an immediate uptick in NIL to the program here in the last week? Like, we know there is money in Las Vegas if people want to direct it that way.
Well, the school on both of the big programs doesn't really promote, hey, this is the budget, we're getting donations on this front. They just don't do it. Mm-hmm. A lot of that stuff's kind of behind the scenes. They have a very public collective, but they don't announce numbers. The story that came out late last week was the owner of Circa, Derek Stevens, he's a Detroit guy, but really become a true Las Vegan, said, you know what, hey, you guys need the money to pay the quarterback. I'll give you the money. But at that point, it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about being cash poor. Odom made the decision on, again, the way that Sluka presented what he wanted. I'm certain that they could have drummed up the money. It was not a shortage of money deal.
Yeah, I'd imagine if the season keeps going the way it's going, that Haj Malik Williams might get some late season NIL the way this thing's going on. All right, so that was the story that kind of like we woke up to it, whatever it was last Wednesday, and like, what is going on out here? And then simultaneously, this Pac-12 Mountain West stuff is going on with, at last check, UNLV having agreed to stay with the Mountain West. Why did it come down to this? And like, why is this not why everybody gets along with each other situation?
Well, the schools that split, and it was originally the four that left the Mountain West to go to the Pac-12, led by San Diego State and Boise State, have been trying to get away from the rest of the Mountain West. They feel like they have a bigger profile, and at one point they were both going to go to the Big East when that actually existed, which I thought at the time that was absurd, but apparently this is commonplace now that you can have teams in Florida and California in the same conference. But those two schools have been working for a long time to get away from the Mountain West Conference, and Washington State and Oregon State are sitting on a war chest of like $250 million. They want to use the brand. So they're basically going out and buying schools and offering to pay some of the exit fees. Now, what's happened since is interesting because I think they believe the Pac-12 did that they could go get 4 teams from the AAC. Those guys said no. I think they want more money. So then all of a sudden UNLV that was left out of the original 4 invites then became a hot commodity. And for UNLV, they were looking at spending $18 million plus on an exit fee and other monies to get into the Pac-12, or the Mountain West came with the money that the Pac-12 is going to have to pay the Mountain West, and then incentivized a couple of schools, and one of those schools was UNLV, and over the next at least 3 years, they're going to get somewhere between $15 and $20 million, and for a program from an athletic budget standpoint that hasn't been hitting home runs, was in the soup a little bit. That's like basically a $38 million swing of having to dole out money versus getting money. So I think UNLV's attitude is, hey, let's see how they build the Mountain West Conference. We'll stay around as one of the flagship programs. Maybe UNLV can be a Gonzaga sort of football program in a conference that might not be as good, but raise its profile. And if the Big 12 ever expands, then UNLV could be at the forefront there.
It's wild how things have happened. That like Oregon has joined the Big Ten, so UNLV gets money is one of the weird like what just happened to get us to this point. So now we look at these two leagues, right, Steve? Neither of them are whole yet. Like neither of them have enough teams to actually be a football league, and clearly we've reached a stalemate. It feels like between teams crossing the line one way or another. So where are either of these leagues going to get somebody to fill out the rest of their group?
Well, there's candidates in the West, in the Pacific time zone, and the Mountain time zone. Believe it or not, I think the two conferences might bicker over Texas State, which is actually a big school, and they've only been Division I since their FBS since 2012, but they have a lot of money. There's 40,000 undergrads at the school in San Marcos, Texas, just south of Austin, so I think that's one of the schools they'll be looking at. New Mexico State has some intrigue, although it hasn't been great athletically on the football field, so that could be one that fills it out. Mountain West reps the commission of the Mountain West. They actually reached out to Toledo and Northern Illinois to try to expand the footprint because those have been two good football programs. In the end, they're going to get enough schools. They're going to get their 8 schools or more, and obviously the Pac-12 went for a brand with basketball with Gonzaga. So I think both are very much in the works to have at least 8 full-time, if not 10 full-time, and they'll be good-sized conferences. The sad thing is I think they'll both probably be 10-school conferences. They could have just made a mega Mountain time zone, Pacific time zone, and all gotten along and had 20 teams and felt like more sturdy for the next 5 or 6 years, but they don't want to do that.
Yeah, crazy times. Strange bedfellows through all of this, as we've seen, as the fact that Syracuse-Stanford was a conference game 2 weeks ago. So lots of strange stuff going on around the country right now. So we got Steve Caulfield from ESPN Radio Las Vegas with us. Like all of this is going on, Steve, while UNLV may have the best team in the history of the program that you're getting to watch on a week-in, week-out basis. What is it that's making this team so good this year?
Yeah, it's been an amazing turnaround. A lot of it is one thing. Barry Odom came in last year and actually, I'll say, acted like an adult, unlike many coaches when they go into a new spot with a losing program. And I feel like a lot of coaches are like, we don't want any of you guys.
Yeah.
Barry Odom specifically located about 12 or 14 core players that he wanted to have stick around. And now all those guys are 5th and 6th year players. The majority of them excelled. And then back-to-back years, he's brought in 50 new players, and some of those players, those first 50 went bye-bye, and whole new group came in. They really nailed it in grabbing guys that were core players. Like Ricky White was already here, the All-American receiver. They nailed it on a great scout, and Jacob DeJesus, who's a little guy, doesn't have the measurables at 5'7" and 170, but he's one of the best return dudes in the country. And he hired a good offensive coordinator, if not great, in Brennan Marion, who seems to be a quarterback whisperer. They're running this offense that has a lot of eye candy and deception, and that's working. And this year, unlike last year, they tried to upgrade the defensive personnel. It didn't totally work out, so they couldn't play the defense they wanted. Well, they feel real comfortable with the upgrades this year on defense, and now they're 3-3-5, which really is designed to attack, especially from the safety position. And, again, I'll use the word eye candy, kind of really screw up the head of the quarterback. That's working, and it worked really well last week. Because Mikey Keene for Fresno State, who was at Central Florida, and he's a good quarterback. And I think they broke him by the middle of the third quarter. He was kind of shell shocked. He was scrambling, just throwing the ball out of bounds for safety. He got whacked a bunch of times. So if you can rush the quarterback and you feel confident your back end can cover the deep ball, then you got a pretty good defense.
I'd say, ironically, Syracuse spent the last 3 years playing the 3-3-5, but all those people are gone. So they will have the main core this year doesn't actually have the experience practicing against it. So we'll see how that goes on Friday. You mentioned White. I mean, this guy's a stud, right? Like a wide receiver. It looks like future pro. How tough a cover is this guy?
He's tough. I mean, last week with more efficiency and better decisions at quarterback, he got the ball 10 times. So he had 10 for 152. I think the total number is. The other thing about him, though, he's such a good leader. And this is another cool thing about Barry Odom and UNLV is Barry Odom puts a real premium on the third facet of the game, and that is special teams. They practice special teams in practice every day more than I've ever seen a college football program do. And the key is the buy-in from some of their best players. Their best defensive player is linebacker Jackson Woodard. He wants to be out there on all four units on special teams. He's not, but he's out there most of the time. Ricky White has become this weapon, their star wide receiver, on the punt coverage team because he's on the edge. He's already blocked a punt. Last week they had a block up the middle, and he was there on the side to scoop and score. So not only is he a great wide receiver, really dangerous, but now he's setting an example like, hey, special teams are important, and you can make yourself. I mean, in the case of Ricky White, I have no idea if he's going to be a really good receiver in the NFL, but he's probably carved out a spot, at least a dude, if he stays healthy, who can be 8-10 years in the NFL as a special teamer.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about if you're on the edge of the roster, that tips you over the top. And, man, Syracuse's special teams have been sketchy at best through the opening month of the season, so that'll be something in a major way to watch on Friday. All right, last thing, Steve, what kind of attendance? What's UNLV drawing for these games? Because obviously UNLV being good at football is kind of a new on the block thing around there.
Yeah, well, they were good last year. I'll tell you about this. There wasn't a lot of equity around town, and they're playing in this giant stadium, so people are slow to come on board. They had like 25,000 for the game last week. They have Allegiant configured for about 40 or 37,000. So I think they're trying to push north of 30. That doesn't sound like a lot, but for UNLV football it is. And that Allegiant Stadium actually does get loud, even with 25 or 30,000 people in it. So the fact that Syracuse is playing the first time on the road, it'll be a factor. They'll get loud, and McCord's going to have to deal with, especially if he's changing plays at the line, he's going to have to deal with some pretty good noise.
All right. I think it's going to be a fun game on Friday, Steve. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks as always for stopping by, and enjoy the game on Friday, all right?
I will. Appreciate it. Thank you.
There he is, Steve Cofield of ESPN Radio in Las Vegas. And, man, I just think, they got a lot of stuff going on with that team right now, but that's a really good team. I think McCord